Hey, what's up, Flatirons? I'm Jesse.
And I'm Zach.
And we are so glad that you joined us today. I'm telling you, Zach, it's so hard to do church without anybody in the building.
It's crazy. It's so weird.
We don't like it. We miss you guys so much, but it's just been amazing to see what God's doing even while our doors are closed. The mission is still being accomplished. God's kingdom is still moving. Check out this picture. So this picture is this group of people. They're up in, I think, Alaska, Soldotna. Oh, it's right there. Soldotna, Alaska. And that's a group that gets together every week and watches Flatirons. And so we sent them up some swag through one of our people who attends the Lafayette campus. And it's just crazy to think that there are people up in Alaska who are a part of our family. So it's just amazing. What God's doing is still happening, and I just couldn't be more proud to be a part of this place.
I love it. Every week I get to hear amazing stories coming out of groups, and during this time of COVID-19 and all the isolation and everything else, groups have really held us together. And so all of our group leaders and coaches across all of our campuses, I just want to tell you how thankful we are for the ministry you continue to do, both with your friends, with your neighbors, with the people in your community. You've really held us together, and we are so thankful for that. Speaking of that, right now, tonight, the group application, if you want to be a brand new leader, the application is live at flatirons.church.com. And here's what that looks like. If you want to lead a group, maybe you have friends, maybe you have neighbors, maybe you just want to open up to whoever wants to sign up for your group, we need you. It really is the thing that's making our church go right now. So if you check that out, here's the question is, like, what's groups look like? Are groups online? Are groups live? What's that going to be? And here's what I want to tell you. We want your family, we want you to be safe. And so you might lead a Zoom group. You might lead a group in the park until it gets to be wintertime. You might lead a group in your home with distancing or whatever that might look like. We trust you as somebody who steps up and says, I want to lead, to figure out a safe way for you to do that. And everybody who signs up for a group can find a group that makes sense for them and their family as well. So we really believe that we can do this well, do this safely. We can't wait to see what groups accomplishes in this next season here at Flatirons.
Man, that's so awesome. And groups have been the lifeblood of our church during this season. And then, Zach, tell everybody about the app. We're launching the app.
If you missed last week, the app is live. So we have a brand new app. You can go check it out on all the different platforms to pick that up and put it on your phone. And I don't know, if you're out of room, it might be time to delete Angry Birds 2, or even the first Angry Birds, as great as it is.
I'm a fan.
Candy Crush. Jesse plays Candy Crush like crazy. We have no in-app purchases. Like, you don't have to worry about us doing that to you. The app is amazing. You can catch up to on all of our services. There's some announcement type stuff on there. Our staff pages there, which people ask about all the time. You can see all of that live right now on the app.
That's awesome. And then last announcement that we've got for you is that starting next weekend, we're combining our 4 and our 6 o'clock services to a 5 p.m. service time. And then this is something that you guys have been asking for a long time. Why can't we just, like Netflix, you can just watch things on demand? Can we just watch church on demand? And so starting next weekend at 5 o'clock, you're going to be able to watch our church services on demand anytime that you want for weeks, hours, weeks, days, months.
You can watch this over and over. These announcements are gold.
I think they cut the announcements from those versions. I'm not sure. So anyways, you can stream services starting at 5 p.m. on Saturdays. We'll still have our normal service times of 5, 9, and 11. Flatirons, we are so grateful to worship with you today as we close up our series, Survival 101. Let's worship together.
So good to see you.
Forgive my sin. You, my God, heal my brokenness. In you, my God, my life redeemed. You crown me with love and with mercy. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. I will count every blessing. I will never forget. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. Out of how great the chasm that lay between us, and how high the mountain I could not climb. And in desperation I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Oh, Jesus Christ, my living hope. And who could imagine so great a mercy? And what heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages steps down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. And the cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Oh, Jesus Christ, my living hope. And hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise, and your buried body began to breathe. And out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe, and out of the silence, So we're about to sing this song, and there's a line in the chorus that says, "There's another in the fire standing next to me." And that song, that line, comes from the story in the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, where these three guys get thrown into a fire for their faith. And the point of the whole story, God ends up delivering them from the fire. But the point of the story is actually not that he delivered them from the fire, but that while they were in the middle of the fire, God, Jesus, was with them. So what is that fire for you? What is it that you're right in the middle of, that you're terrified of, that feels like your world is crumbling down and you don't have control, and that God might be inviting you to trust him in? So as we sing this song, if you would just remember and think about the fact that God doesn't promise that everything's going to be perfect or easy in your life, but he promises that he will be with you through it all. Let's pray as we continue to worship. So God, we want to trust you more. Would you grow and increase our faith, that in the midst of the fire, in the midst of the furnace, that we can turn to you, that we can trust you and believe that you are good and you are with us. In your name we pray. There's a grace when the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. And when I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fire, standing next to me. There was another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need the reminding of how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears the burden, where another died for me. There is another in the fire. There is another in the fire. All my dead left for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. Should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning, either way I will bow to the things of this world. I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding, where power set me free, there is a grave that holds nobody, but now that power lives in me. There is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. And I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bounds to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between words thin. I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There is no other name than the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it all. So come with me in the space between all the things unseen and this reckoning. I know I will never be alone. That's right. And I know I will never be alone. There'll be another in the fire standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters holding back the sea. Should I ever need reminding, how good you've been to me? I count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I can see, and I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. And I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between us thin. And I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between. There'll be another in the fire standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding, how good you've been to me? I count the joy from every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I count the joy from every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I count the joy from every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I count the joy from every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be.
All right, what's up? Hey, I'm Ben Foote, teaching pastor here. I'm very glad that we can be together virtually right now. Glad you're here. Today we're wrapping up this 3-week series that we've called Survival 101. All right? We've been taking a look through a book of the Bible called Philippians, which is actually a letter written by a guy named Paul, who's in prison for being a Christian, and he's writing the letter to a group of people who are being persecuted for being Christians. So it's a terrible situation. But even in the midst of all that hardship and suffering and uncertainty, this book, Philippians, it's like the survival guide to unshakable joy. Right? How to have joy no matter what life throws at you. How to have joy regardless of your circumstances. So every single week in this series, we've been jumping into a different section of Philippians, and we've been looking at it through the lens of like, okay, what does this have to say about joy, even in the midst of a really hard time? And we've been learning these little like practical mindset changes that we can make in order to begin seeing the kind of joy that Jesus promises us. And I don't want to go back and like recap the last couple of weeks. If it sounds interesting to you and you missed it, just go watch it after this online. But for today, the only thing that we need to know or remember from this series in order to move on is simply this. What am I talking about when I use the word joy? What is biblical joy? And the definition that we've been using throughout this thing is this. Joy is a feeling deep in the soul that comes from knowing that Jesus is still at work in our lives and in our world. All right, so joy is more deeply rooted, like it's more foundational and unshakable than just like a fleeting sense of happiness or whatever. And also, the kind of joy that Jesus brings into our lives is the result of a mindset, and you can control and change and direct your mindset. He will do the work of creating joy when we do the work of changing our mindset, choosing to know and remember and reflect on the fact that Jesus is still at work in our lives and in our world. Today, I want to talk about one more change in that mindset that we can make according to Paul in the book of Philippians to lead us to unshakable joy. But before we do that, I want to share a story with you. All right, so last time I was up, I mentioned that recently I took a few weeks off of work and spent some time with my family. And we just stayed here in Colorado. We went fishing and hiking and camping. We were just outside basically the entire time. And I'm not going to lie, like over the course of this vacation, I had several great dad moments. All right, any of you who's watching this who's a dad, you know what I'm talking about. They're those moments for me, at least, they come like few and far between, but they're those moments where as a dad, you actually know that you're doing a good job, right? You can look at it and you'd be like, I'm killing it right now. Like as a dad, like look at me go. You know, for example, one day I took Micah fishing at a lake nearby, and in about 2 hours, we caught 20 fish, and 4 of them were Micah's catches. It was a great father-son afternoon. It was a great dad moment. You know, as a dad, I'm killing it, right? I'm just taking names in this dad game. Another day, we went up to Jim's place in the mountains, and again, we went fishing, and Micah stepped on a snake, and we made s'mores, and we played games, and we drove the four-wheeler around. Again, as a dad, I'm killing it. I'm starting to get cocky even, right? I'm like, I'm just doing my job, you know, making memories left and right. So I'm feeling good, right, during this little vacation. I'm on a winning streak as a dad, and I'll take whatever I can get. I'm on a run until the very last day. Because on that very last day, I snapped my streak of great dad moments. See, to end our vacation, we went camping for a couple nights. Now, my favorite kind of camping is you put like everything in a backpack, you haul it for miles and miles to the middle of nowhere, you camp there, you filter your water out of streams, you hang your food up in trees so that bears don't come and attack your tent. I personally love that kind of camping. I'm actually doing that kind of camping tomorrow. And one day I'll take my kids on a camping trip like that, but they're not ready for it yet. And so we actually found this spot in Lyons that's like great for kind of easing your kids into camping. Because it's car camping, right? So you park and your reserved campsite is 10 feet from your car. Right? There's probably like 15, 20 campsites on this campground, all of them right on the St. Vrain River, so it's beautiful. And it's also great for the kids because there's like a public bathroom and a playground and a splash pad. It's a good spot to ease them into camping. And again, the first night and the first day are like just about perfect. Right? The kids sleep pretty well in the tent. They have blasts the next day. Spend the whole day like playing and swimming in the river. They're throwing rocks and splashing each other. They're fishing and playing on the playground. Micah built a dam. But by the end of the day, they're just like dirty, tired, happy little kids, right? Who had a really good day of camping. Again, as a dad, I'm ready to write the book on fatherhood at this point. But the very last night was different, right? Because there is a huge con to car camping. And the con is that you have neighbors. And you never know what kind of neighbor you're going to get. It's a pretty serious gamble. And so the campsite that's like 15 yards to our left has been empty all day long. And about 7:30 at night, after we finish eating dinner and the kids are finally getting really sleepy, at about that time, cars start pulling up. There's this huge crew of people, like a dozen people, all in their like 50s and 60s, I would guess, and they start lugging gear into their campsite. Now, my first red flag. Right? My first red flag is when I notice that in terms of the gear that they're bringing in, I'm seeing more instrument cases than I am seeing like sleeping bags and stuff. That's the first red flag. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Second red flag is this. One of the guys hangs from his tent a 15 by 15 foot tie-dye Grateful Dead flag. Right? So my second red flag is a literal red tie-dye flag. So I'm going, okay, so these guys are deadheads. All right, deadheads are people who love the Grateful Dead. My third red flag is when at 9:30 in the evening, one of these guys goes, okay, let's get started. And they take their camp chairs and they make this massive circle, which some of their chairs are in my campsite now, by the way. And they pull out harmonicas and guitars and banjos and mandolins. They light a stick of sage in the middle of their circle and they start jamming. Now, the quiet hours that you agree to when you make a reservation at this campground are from 9 p.m. until sunrise. And that's because this place is designed for families with little kids. But again, I'm in a good mood. I'm winning as a dad, right? So sure, it's past the quiet hours curfew, but I've had a good day. And sure, they're not the most talented musicians I've ever heard in my life, but I'm like, good for them. Looks like they have this great group of lifelong friends. I'll let it slide. Well, 9:30 becomes 10, 10 becomes 11, and 11 becomes midnight. And during the course of that time, for my Grateful Dead neighbor friends, 1 beer becomes 2, and 2 beers become 10, and 10 beers becomes midnight. They're like basically blacked out drunk. And the drunker they get, the louder they get, and the less talented they get on their mandolins. Now, there's something you got to know about me. For me personally, there is nothing that makes me more mad than when people are purposely inconsiderate of others. It drives me nuts. And so, over the course of this 2.5-hour jam session, I'm becoming increasingly more obsessed with how angry I am. I'm starting to fantasize about what I'm going to say to them when I leave the tent and break up their jam session. True story, this is how angry I was. I was considering this. I was considering going out and going right to the mandolin player. He was especially loud. And going up to him and being like, hey man, how much does your mandolin cost? And then when he's like, $250, I was going to take it and smash it on the ground and be like, I'll cut you a check tomorrow, go to bed. I'm not proud of it. I was not in a good spot. And so I'm talking to Allie, and I'm trying to get Allie to like calm me down and cool me off, right? I'm trying to get her to talk me out of going out there and throwing a fit because I don't want to lose my head. I don't want to go cuss a bunch of people out like I'm a pastor. I'm supposed to be better than that, right? So I'm trying to get Allie to calm me down. But while she's doing that, all right, she's saying stuff like, Ben, please don't go out there. Please don't lose your mind. Please don't go off on these people. While she's doing that, at 12:30 in the morning, they bust the violin out for the first time. I did not see the violin case. And so now at 12:30 in the morning, it's just like, like echoing through this campground. And I don't know what happened, and I'm not proud of it, but I just exploded. And these words come out of me like an unexpected burp. And I just shout in front of Allie and the kids in this tent. I finally shout, I go, shut up! Just shut up! And it gets awkwardly quiet. And you can hear murmuring. These people are like, maybe we should just wrap it up. There's little kids here. And they're murmuring between each other until suddenly the drunkest deadhead shouts back. And he goes, they're called earplugs. One more song. And they start playing again, louder and less talented than they've been all night. At this point, of course, I am weighing the pros and cons of going to prison. But thankfully, they finish their last song. They go to bed. The next morning, as we're packing up to leave, they're all giving us death stares, like Grateful Dead death stares. I don't even care. I'm almost dying for one of them to say something so that I can just go off. I am not in a good place. I am obsessed with how mad I am. Then we're in the car and we're driving on the way home, and Allie's mortified. She's like one of the least confrontational people I know. Micah and Emery are both in the back of the van, and they're going, Daddy, you said we can't say shut up. Why did you say shut up? Why did you yell at those people? It was terrible. Now, here's why I tell that story. Right? Partly it's just to vent and get it off my chest, but mostly it's because our vacation ended on a sour note. I snapped my streak of great dad moments. It ended poorly, and it ended poorly only because I could not stop obsessing on the one bad thing that happened. I mean, we were having a great time. We were surrounded by great memories and great moments, but I became obsessed with the negative. If I did not become obsessed with the negative, I wouldn't have gotten so angry. If I didn't get so angry, I would have calmly walked over to my deadhead friends and said, I think it's fantastic that you're doing this. You can do this all day tomorrow. But for now, I've got a 7 and a 5 and a 2-year-old who are trying to go to bed 6 feet from your mandolin. And if I could have done that calmly, I would put money on the deadheads would be respectful. And they would go to bed, and the night would have ended well. And most importantly, our vacation would not end on a sour note. It wouldn't be tainted by me losing my mind at the very end of it. The key is I obsessed on the negative, and the result was I lost my mind. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Getting so obsessed with the negative that you start losing your mind. Because that's what I want to talk about today. And I'll be honest, all right? What we're talking about today is probably the biggest thing from the book of Philippians that I struggle with applying in my life. So honestly, like I'm genuinely learning this right alongside you right now. And that's because I can tend to be a pessimistic person. If you're watching this and you're a pessimistic person, you know that we would call it being realistic, but really we're being pessimistic. Right? There are those people who are like, are you a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of guy? And I'm like, I don't even really like the glass to begin with, if I'm being honest. And so I struggle with what we're going to talk about today. This thing where we get so obsessed on the negative that we start to lose our minds. But at the same time, I think it's important to talk about. Because I see it in my life, I see it in the lives of people close to me, and I feel like I'm seeing it everywhere right now. The easiest, in-your-face example of this right now is all the COVID stuff and how people are reacting to it. We're obsessing on the negative depending on which side of the argument you're on. For example, one side of the argument, some people have become absolutely obsessed with the fear of getting sick or one of their loved ones getting sick. It's all you can think about. It's all you read about in the news, and then your Facebook feed has a legit algorithm to give you more of what you're already reading about. And so now you're stuck in this echo chamber of fear around the virus, and the result is we stay locked up in our homes, and we call it bravery. And we stock up on 50 cases of hand sanitizer, and we get furious when we see people without masks. And before you get mad at me, because maybe you kind of lean towards that side, on the other side of the argument, it is the same obsession. It just has a different look. Some people have become obsessed with the fear that we're losing our rights as Americans. It's all you can think about. It's all you read about in the news. And so Facebook gives you more of what you're already reading about. And so now you're stuck in this echo chamber of fear that the government is out to control us. And so the result is we leave our house all the time. And we call it bravery. And we've stocked up on 50 cases of 9mm ammunition, and we get furious when we see people with masks on. That's the clearest in our face example of obsessing on the negative, of course, but we see this in our personal lives too, right? We start to obsess on the past. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why did I used to live my life that way? We obsess on the present. Here is everything in my life that currently sucks. And then we obsess on the negative in the future, right? It's only a matter of time until things fall apart. And if X, Y, and Z were to happen, I could lose my job or I could lose my marriage. We tend to obsess on the negative. And the result is we're starting to lose our minds. It's just, it becomes harder to think clearly and objectively, harder to find solutions, harder to hold on to hope and joy. And so we're brought into this place where we live life out of fear, or maybe we live life with a sense of futility. And the result is we start grumbling and complaining and arguing and dragging our feet through life. And yet, I see the exact opposite going on in the book of Philippians. Got to remember, this letter is written by a guy who's being persecuted, that's Paul, to a group of people who are being persecuted. But even still, he says this. He says, do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation in which you shine like stars in the universe as you hold out the word of life. Paul says that for a Christian, one of the ways that we hold out the word of life, meaning one of the ways that we display the life of Jesus to the world, is by doing everything without complaining or arguing. He says that if we can do that, we will shine like stars in the universe. We'll be like really bright lights in a really dark place. Do everything without complaining or arguing. And I feel like if we were to take a temperature of our nation right now, what we would see is a feverish obsession with complaining and arguing. And I'm not exempt, right? I read that verse and want to complain about it and argue against it. But at the same time, that is the life that Jesus lived. That is the life that Paul says that we are called to. So how can we start making steps in that direction? Away from obsessing on the negative and losing our minds and complaining and arguing. And I think that's what we see in the very last chapter of Philippians, as Paul is kind of closing out this letter to his friends. We see the antidote for obsessing on the negative, the mindset that leads to complaining, arguing, and joylessness. And so let's do like an old-fashioned Bible study of this little section of Philippians, right? We'll read through all the verses and understand what they mean, and then after that, figure out how it applies to our lives. All right, so we're going to pick up in Philippians chapter 4, verse 4, which I said in week 1 is like the theme of Philippians. Paul says this. He says, "Rejoice in the Lord always." I'll say it again, rejoice. Again, that's like the theme of Philippians. Philippians is the guide to unshakable joy. And Paul really clarifies what he's talking about right there when he says, "Rejoice in the Lord always." So rejoice always, all right, in any and every circumstance, good or bad. But the only reason that's possible is because we're rejoicing in the Lord, not in our circumstances. We're not rooting our joy in how life is looking right now because that's going to change. Instead, we're rooting our joy in the Lord, in the fact that Jesus is still at work in our lives and in the world, because that won't ever change. Then Paul says this next. He says, "Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near." Again, let your gentleness be evident. Shine like bright lights in a dark place. Don't complain or argue. Instead, be gentle. The more that we do that, the more that we and our world will understand that God is actually close to us. He's near. He's not far away. Next, Paul says this. He goes, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." That's a callback to week 1 of this very same series. Paul's reminding us again, he's going, hey, you got to keep in the very front of your mind the fact that Jesus is still king and he's still got this world and your life under control. And so when it comes to the stuff in your life that feels out of your control, right, your future, your career, your health, our nation, you name it, Paul says, hand that stuff over to God. Right? That stuff might be out of your control, but it's not out of his control. Hand it over to him with thanksgiving. God, thank you for being in control of the stuff that's out of control. That's week 1 of the series. After that, in the next verse, Paul tells us what the result will be if we do that. Paul says this, "And if you do that, the peace of God, which like transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." And I don't know about you, all right, but a peace that comes from God that you can't even like quite explain or even articulate because you didn't muster it up on your own strength. That kind of peace sounds really good to me right now. A peace that transcends understanding, a peace that you can have even in situations where peace doesn't really make sense. Paul says it's that kind of peace that Jesus will use to guard your heart and guard your mind. Right, your heart, like the throne of your emotions, and your mind, the throne of your thoughts. Paul says this kind of peace will guard you from losing your mind, like we've been talking about. And I trust Paul on this one. In fact, here's some nerdy Bible word study stuff for you. I think it's cool. But the word that Paul uses for guard in this verse, in the original language, that word is used to describe specifically the task of Roman soldiers who stand on city walls. And at the time that Paul is writing this, he's imprisoned in a Roman garrison. He is surrounded by walls with Roman soldiers standing guard over him. And so it's basically like Paul is saying, listen, my body, my physical body might be guarded by Roman soldiers, but my heart and my mind are being guarded by Jesus. For Paul, there's like this other invisible wall between him and his enemies and his circumstances. There's something that no matter how bad it gets, there's something that guards his heart and guards his mind. That is the peace that comes from God and transcends all understanding. It sounds good, right? So if that sounds good, how do we put some skin into the game, right? How do we make steps toward that kind of peace? Well, the first part is handing the out-of-control stuff to God. That was week 1. We're not going to talk about it again. But in the next verse, we see the other side of that coin, right? The other thing that we can do to begin marching toward that kind of peace. In the next verse, Paul says this. He goes, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Set your mind on those kinds of things." And we'll come right back to that verse, but first I want you to see how he just kind of wraps this section up. He wraps it up by saying this. He goes, "Hey, listen, whatever you have learned or received from me or seen in me, put it into practice. And if you do, the God of peace will be with you." He ends by going, "Listen, I know I'm in prison, but at the same time, I'm smoking what I'm selling, and it works. And if you live this kind of life with me, the result will be a peace that you'll only be able to describe as, yeah, that came from God and not my own strength." So like we've been talking about all throughout this series, what is the adjustment that we can make in our mindset during hard times? What is the change that we can make to lead us to this place where God can do what only God can do, which is create in us a peace that's so good it's hard to even understand? And the adjustment in mindset for today is Philippians 4:8. Again, finally, brothers, sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Anything true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, anything excellent, anything praiseworthy, set your mind on those things. Obsess on stuff like that. What we see in this verse is something that Paul actually talks about all the time. Like, you can pretty much open the New Testament, close your eyes, put your finger down, and Paul is probably talking about this. What we see here is obsessive gratitude. In good circumstances and in bad circumstances, Paul says that we should have obsessive gratitude. Obsess on the excellent. Obsess on the praiseworthy, meaning anything that you feel thankful for. And the chance is you and I might have more to feel thankful for than we even realize. I mean, like in James 1:17, we learn that every good and perfect gift comes from God. So if there's something good in your life, it's because God created it and designed it and gave it to you as a gift. And then in Matthew 5, Jesus tells us that God gives these kind of good gifts to everyone, to people who don't care about them and to people who do care about them, which means whoever you are, and wherever you are, and whatever your circumstances, if you've got something good in your life, it is a gift, and you have God to thank for it. Paul says, go looking for those good things in your life. Actively seek them out, especially when times are hard, and then thank God for them. Display obsessive gratitude. Thank Him for everything. Thank God for the killer sunset you just saw, or the perfectly cooked steak that you just ate. Thank Him for, your marriage that has weathered like thick and thin. Thank Him for the good bike ride you had this morning. Thank Him for the laughter you get when your kids do something hilarious. Thank Him for lifelong friendships. Thank Him for newly formed friendships. Thank Him for the true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, and excellent things in your life. Think about those things and be thankful for them. Paul says that redirecting our minds in that direction takes us one step closer to that peace that you can't even understand. And it kind of makes sense, right? Here's why it makes sense to me. It's because, honestly, I'm doing the opposite of that right now. I feel like I'm seeing the opposite of that right now in our nation. We are obsessing on the negative, and the result has not been peace and joy. In fact, the result has been exactly what Paul said it would be: complaining and arguing and joylessness. Paul says the antidote for that obsession on the negative, for losing your mind into all the soul-sucking, complaining, arguing, and joylessness, the antidote for that is obsessive gratitude. Paul is reminding the Philippians, and now he's reminding us that, yes, even in 2020, all is not lost. If Jesus can take death on a cross and make life come out of it, then he can take my own suffering and hardship and uncertainty and make life come out of it. All is not lost. And there's still a lot of true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent things in our lives to be thankful for. Go looking for those things. Because according to Paul, if we do, we will find that over time, our hearts and our minds will become guarded by this peace that you can't even quite explain. Be obsessive in your gratitude. So every week, I've been ending this thing with a challenge, right? I throw out a simple challenge. It's just something that we can do to see if Jesus starts growing this new unshakable joy in our lives. Week 1 was a challenge around the safety and security we have to feel in order to experience joy. Week 2 was a challenge around the contentment we need to feel to experience joy. And then this week, it's around gratitude and the peace that we need to feel in order to experience joy. And this week's challenge is really pretty simple, because my kids can do it. Here's what I mean by that. So at my house, we pray throughout the day. You know, most typically it's like before we eat and before we go to bed. And as my kids get older, like I want to teach them more and more about prayer, you know, like what prayer is and what prayer isn't. But for right now, while they're still really young, we've just taught them that prayer is like one long list of thank yous. So, you know, for example, before bed, we'll all sit on the floor together and the kids will take turns praying. And they just list stuff they're thankful for. They always start the same way. So they go, "Dear God, thank you for Mommy and Daddy and Emery and Micah and Chloe, and thank you for Grandpa and Mimi." And they list every single family member that we have. After that, they start thanking God for stuff that happened that day. Like, thank you for fishing and thank you for going camping. They'll like look around the room too. Thank you for my American Girl doll. You know, thank you for the park. Thank you for the fact that we went to dinner at Burger King. That's a real one. It's also a legit prayer. If you haven't been to the BK Lounge in a while, do yourself a favor. They just thank God for stuff that comes to mind. In fact, one time, our 2-year-old Chloe just, this is a little gross, I'm sorry, she ripped a massive fart in the middle of our prayer time. Everyone cracked up, and then when we all settled down, Micah immediately prayed, "Dear God, thank you for Chloe's silly toots," which has made its way into just about every single prayer since then. They just thank God for anything that comes to mind. And then we always end the exact same way. We go, "God, thank you for loving us and protecting us and providing for us, and thank you for Jesus. We love you. Amen." See, what they're doing is literally cataloging everything good in their lives, and then they're reading the list off to God and telling him thank you. And honestly, I've always kind of viewed that as like an overly simple approach to prayer. Right? It's just like, it's an approach that's really only good for little kids. If I'm being super honest, like if there's a good baseball game on downstairs and their list is just going on and on forever, I'm like disappointed that we taught them to pray that way. I'm kidding. I'm like kind of kidding. But I've always seen it as this overly simple approach to prayer, and it technically is, right? Prayer is much more than just that, but I don't know. Like after studying through Philippians, especially the stuff that we read together today, like sometimes the simple stuff has like a lot of wisdom and a lot of goodness in it. And so the challenge is this. During this uncertain time in our nation, all right, this uncertain time in my life and in your life, during this time where it's so easy to obsess on the negative and lose our minds, in the middle of that time, the challenge is once every day, catalog the good things you have in your life and tell God thank you for them. Once every day, pray the same prayer that my kids pray. Just thank him for stuff. You know, thank him for the good, like big, important stuff. God, thank you for my family and my friends and my house and my paycheck and the food that I've got in the pantry. Thank him for the stuff that seems small and unimportant because it's still good. You know, God, thank you for the Rockies winning record right now. And thank you for the funny show that we're watching on TV. I needed a good laugh. And thanks for the date night I got coming up. And thank you for spicy Cheez-Its and donuts. That is a reoccurring theme in most of my prayers. For the next week, let's put Paul's challenge to the test. Whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy, think about those things. Set your mind on them. Let's go looking for those things in our lives and then tell God thank you for them. Let's be obsessive in our gratitude. And then we can see if Jesus gives us more of this peace that like you can't even understand or explain. And to close right now, all I'm going to do is lead us through one of those prayers. So let's pray. So dear God, in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of fear, in the midst of sadness, in this weird, like crazy backwards year of 2020 that we're living in right now, in the midst of all that, all we want to do right now is say thank you. God, thank you for the big, like critical, important stuff in our lives. Thank you for our families. Thank you for our friends. God, thank you for the roof that we've got over our heads tonight. God, thanks for the food that's on the table. God, thank you for the stuff that like seems unimportant or small, right? Like the stuff that we as human beings don't technically need to survive. You just gave it to us because you're good. God, thank you for the fact that food tastes delicious, and thanks for music, and thanks for laughter, and thanks for this beautiful state that most of us live in, Colorado. God, thanks for that front range that we get to see every day. Thanks for the sunrise. Thanks for the beautiful sun that sets behind that range every day. And then God, thank you for our church. God, thank you for the internet. Thank you for the fact that we can all be sitting on our couches in our homes, but also be together right now. God, I thank you for every single person who calls this place home. I thank you for the people who are tuned in right now and they're all about you. They're all in. God, I thank you for the people who are tuned in right now and they're watching this and they don't know what to think about you. They might even hate you. God, thank you for those people. And God, thank you for the gifts that you've given every single one of us, even though we tend to look over them a lot. And then God, ultimately, and as always, thank you for loving us. Thank you for protecting us. Thank you for providing for us. And thank you for Jesus. We love you. Amen.
I'm not gonna be afraid, 'cause these waves are only waves. I'm not gonna be afraid. No, I'm not gonna be afraid. I'm not gonna fear the storm. You are greater than its roar. I'm not gonna fear the storm. No, I'm not gonna fear it all. Peace be still. Say the word and I will say believe. Let faith rise up in me. Let faith rise up, oh heart, believe it. Let faith rise up in me. Oh, let faith rise up, oh heart, believe it. Let faith rise up in me. Let faith rise up, oh heart, believe it. Let faith rise up in me. Peace, peace, love, say the word, and I will set my feet upon the sea till I'm dancing in the deep. Love, peace, peace, love, you are here, so it is well. Even when my eyes can't see, I will trust the voice that speaks. Oh, Hey, Flatirons, thank you guys so much for worshiping with us today. We would love it if you would join us again next weekend. We hope you have a great week. Thanks so much. Take care.